everybody, and welcome back to another episode of From BA to Broadway. You know who it is. It's me. It's your host, Mr. Brennan Stefanik, and we are here live at BroadwayCon. Folks, if this is your first time tuning into the pod, we are From BA to Broadway. We are your premier showbiz education podcast. We are here to bring you all of the info they don't teach you in theater school about being an actor, and all of the things you shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars to learn. I think this will probably come out at about our year anniversary mark. So first of all, thank you everyone so much for your support. In the past year, we've gained a lovely following. We've had over 9,000 downloads of this podcast in 38 countries and 5 continents on this here globe, which is crazy that people want to tune in and listen to me speak every week. That's still unfathomable to me, but I am incredibly grateful for everyone's love and support. Your general programming reminders, folks, every Monday we are here with the main episodes. Every Friday we are here with our miniseries In the Spotlight with our dear theater historian, Mr. Daniel J. Solly. But that's enough about that. That's not why we're here today. Hey, folks, we're here live at BroadwayCon with a very special guest. Y'all loved her first episode. It was the most downloaded episode of the year. It was.
Oh my gosh.
It is Miss Cara Rose DiPietro. Cara, what's going on?
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's so
I figured I'd spring that on
you. Oh my gosh.
you. Yeah,
I'm so honored.
I didn't want the ego to get too big ahead of time. Cara, how you doing?
I'm so good. I'm so stoked to be here.
I'm so stoked to have you here. We did your first guest questions last time, but just for a brief overview, who are you? What do you do? Did you go to school for theater?
Yeah. So my name is Cara Rose DiPietro. I am a 25-year-old actor here in New York City. I also create content. That's kind of what I do. I make content about my life and my journey as an actor, amongst many other things. And I did go to school for performing. Collegiately, that's where I studied. I went to Elon University, and I got my BFA in music theater there, and I graduated in 2021.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No, truly. I always say, I feel like 2020 had the rug ripped out from under them.
Yeah.
And for 2021, the bar was so low. So when the bar was raised just a little bit, we were like, oh, sick.
Okay.
So truly, it was way better.
Did you get a last year in person?
We did.
Okay.
We danced in 10 by 10 squares, but we got to walk graduation and we got vaccinated by April. So
okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Well, then I take it back. I'm not sorry.
Yeah, it could have been.
I'm happy you got that.
Yeah.
Sorry to the 2020 people.
Yeah.
And Cara, your second time guest questions. What is your favorite piece of musical theater?
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite musicals of all time, and people tend to laugh at me about this.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
It's Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
I love Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
I love it so much. I think it's so beautiful, and I cry every single time.
I really don't know Fiddler that well. I'm not going to lie. I saw one community theater production once, and my takeaway was that someone stood on a chair and it broke.
Yeah.
Which was very unfortunate, but it was very memorable.
Yeah.
And then, Cara, what is your favorite personal theatrical experience you've ever had?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm asking the heavy-hitting questions today.
I will say my favorite show that I have ever done, the most special show I've ever been a part of, was I was in a production of the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Amazing.
Was it 2024?
That was last year.
No, so it was 2023.
Okay.
Is what it was. I have no concept of time. But it was just kind of one of those weird instances where, it was a dream role of mine, and I got to go back to a theater that I was an intern at in 2019 that I loved. It was one of my favorite places I've ever worked. And it just so happened to be one of those instances where you, work somewhere and you're like, oh, all of these people will be in my life forever.
Of course.
And it was so special and so fun. I'll never forget it for as long as I live.
Amazing. I love that. That's also just such a fun, lighthearted show. And there's not too many that let you tap into that just weird little kid dynamic, So we take what we can get for sure. Folks, today we are here to talk to you about audition season. We are in the thick of it. It is a wild time in the life of an actor. Generally speaking, what would you call audition season? Because we always toss that around, but I don't know if there isn't a real definition, but in your mind, what are the months that span?
I mean, I'm still figuring it out.
So valid.
I also think post-pandemic, everyone else is too.
Yeah.
To me, at least, I feel like last year was my first true one.
Yes, same.
When I think about, I think there are, kind of a couple waves throughout the year.
Yeah.
But the big wave is, mid-January to, end of April.
Yeah.
And then there's a crazy push in the middle of the summer for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's a crazy push, beginning of fall, end of summer, beginning of fall.
Yeah.
But really, that chunk of, end of January.
That beginning chunk feels like it's gonna be all of your 2025, 2026 seasons.
Yes.
It's a lot of your summer stock. Also summer stock, just linguistically, is just kind of regional theater that happens during the summer. It's for all of those people vacationing in all of their various homes, and it's lovely and fun and wonderful. But yeah, it does tend to take this lovely part of the year that we are currently in right now, when it is coldest out there, and everyone is just out there on the grind doing their best, So just generally speaking, we'll do a little term review. We got EPA, Equity Principal Audition. Those are auditions specifically for equity members. Non-union can be seen. We have our ECCs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an ECC boy. I can't say I participate in ECCs too much just because I'm not a dancer. And ECC is Equity Chorus Call. That is for people who would like to be in the ensemble. There are two kinds. It is a singer call or a dancer call. And those are the ones that feel the most like the Hunger Games, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
That is when the hundreds and hundreds of people are trying to pack into one little holding room in droves for the chance to be seen. And it gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, 6 bars, go. And you're
Yeah,
like, what?
truly. They're like, okay, we'd like to have you sing, and we're going to give you 2 seconds to do so.
Oh,
break legs. And then we have our good old open calls. And I take it back. An open call is truly the Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah.
Those are for anybody and everybody that wants to audition. I feel like that is when you are doing the fewest amount of minutes worth of material just for the sake of getting as many people seen as possible. Did you go to the Wicked one that happened?
No.
Okay, I also did not.
I did not.
But it was at a church of some sort.
I did see that.
It was
I
at a
remember
very
seeing
large building.
the line of people outside, and I said, where are we? Where is that taking place?
From what I understand, there were 5 different rooms. They had 5 different audition rooms to several teams of casting to see as many people as possible.
They knew. They said...
It's Wicked. It's Wicked.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be in Wicked. We're going to be in Wicked someday, right? I'm
from your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, literally. And yeah, it's been an interesting season thus far. Have you been doing it a lot?
Yeah. So I joined the union last year.
Okay.
And really, I still am so very new to the whole EPA ECC thing. And I'm still learning even what they are, how they work, but also what works best for me.
Yes.
You kind of shared that ECCs aren't your bread and butter.
For sure.
And I last year was kind of I've really never done an audition season here because my first 2 in New York, one of them I was completely gone, my first one. And the second one, I was here for a little bit, but then I was gone for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so last year I was fully sat. It was my first year in the union. So it was my first year that I know I could walk in and be seen.
Yes.
And so I just kind of threw every piece of spaghetti at the wall I could.
I love that.
Yes. And I joked
Is that saying?
Yeah, throwing spaghetti at the wall. And
okay, great.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was specifically spaghetti.
Yeah, spaghetti.
Okay, great. No, I love it. Throw that spaghetti at the wall.
But I'm also someone that I say I cannot learn a lesson until it smacks me across the face for some reason.
Heard.
Can't learn it. And so I really had to learn the hard way, what works for me, what doesn't, what boundaries do I have to set? Because auditioning is something that yes, you want to do as much as you can, but if you're doing every single audition you can, then you're only bringing so much to the table, and it's at what cost?
Truly.
So I found I was the ECCs, take so much from me. Like when I leave, whereas an EPA, when I have an appointment time, I can just go in and go out. That doesn't take nearly as much.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm also EMC right now still. EMC is this weird middle ground between union and non-union. It was this program that used to exist. It no longer does. It's about to expire. Where you would accrue points essentially to join the union. And then in 2020, they changed the joining guidelines of how to join the union. And they said the EMC program will no longer exist. Anyone that is in it currently will still be in it until May of 2025.
That's crazy.
And so we have the ability to be seen before non-union if there is time allotted. So it's that weird middle ground. So like, I do have that leg up in that regard, but it's still a lot of waiting and sitting around. And I find the longer that I am waiting, the worse I will do in the room.
Absolutely.
You know, the more I have time to get in my head, it will be a worse experience for me. And that's why, like, especially those singer ECCs, like, there is just too many people. And like, I can't wake up at 4 a.m. for an audition. I can't do it. I can't line up outside. It's winter. It's New York City. It's too cold. It's not a safe place to do that. I can't do that. That is a me thing. There are so many people out there on the grind that are doing that I'm like, respect to y'all. Like, go get it. You know, that's why you're booking right now, you know? So, but like, yeah, I'm not built like that. I'm fragile.
Well, you have to know what your boundaries are.
Truly.
Because you have to learn how to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
Like that is what I've learned about literally everything in life. It is about working smarter, not harder. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're working yourself into the ground, at what cost? You know, because for some people, that hustle and that grind is what works for them.
Truly.
It's what works for them.
Yeah.
For you and I, like, maybe that's not how that works. But there are other things that we can do, maybe that aren't waking up at 4 a.m, that can help us have a leg up in other ways.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Like doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Slay. So there are, just so everyone kind of knows the logistics, there are several auditions happening at several studios over the city every day. You are running from Pearl to Ripley to the Equity Building to some random studio in the middle of downtown that no one's ever heard of. Do you find yourself bouncing from place to place? Are you trying to get things done several one day?
Not often.
Okay.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, sometimes it'll happen where like something will get done and you'll see that like, oh, they're taking walk-ins for something else, because the way that sometimes these auditions will work, especially if you are a member of the union, and you kind of have this right of way. So I think, oh gosh, I might be wrong here. I'm still trying to learn how all of this works.
Of course.
And I feel like I'm wandering around in a room that I'm familiar with, but all the lights are off.
You have all these things today. I love it. I was like, oh my God. So true.
Oh my goodness. But it's like, say if I went to an EPA and I had an appointment time at noon and I did it, but there are 2 other EPAs happening at that time. They also sometimes have these things where there are walk-ins. So like they can reserve, at every EPA, there's a certain amount of walk-ins that Equity holds aside for people that can show up. So like if I didn't get a sign-up time for an EPA that I really wanted to go to, I can go first thing in the morning and get one of those walk-in slots for the day. But sometimes people don't show up in the morning for them. So I could walk in and say, hey, do you have any walk-ins? They could say, yeah, we have one in an hour or 2 hours. So maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, like, I know there have only been a few instances where, like, when it rains, it pours, and all of a sudden I have one audition here and one audition there and one audition here. And it's like, okay, like, buckle up. Here we go. I'm running from this pearl to this pearl. And all of a sudden we're at Ripley and I don't know what day it is.
Truly. Truly.
Yeah.
And then you also face the dichotomy of sometimes there are also those days where everyone and their mother are out there for every single call.
And oftentimes that's just how it is.
Especially
this time of year.
During audition season. Yeah.
Everyone in your whole life is on that block.
And then, I mean, at least with the Equity people, you also have the alternate list. Yes. And then with all of our non-union friends, we have our non-union lists. But then you face the age-old problem of, if I leave this room, are they going to call my name? I know my name is not for 20 more people, but with my luck, am I going to leave this room? They're going to get through all 20 and they're going to call your name, because it happens.
And they will.
It unfortunately does happen. I think we're entering an age where you have to be really specific about what you're auditioning for.
Yes.
You have to prioritize. You have to prioritize what you think you're best for, and also what you think your best chances are in terms of the theater itself and the amount of people there. So you do find yourself running all over the city from place to place, and it can be a little tricky. It can be a little tricky to compartmentalize, especially my heart goes out to all of those people where this is their first season. You know what? I take that back. Every year we're like, oh my God, this is the busiest season it's been. And it's always just as busy as the one before. But every year it feels like it's 9 million times harder.
Yeah, I will say last year I got to like July and was like, okay, so is it always like that? I did was like, okay, so is that what it is? Like, should I buckle up? Is that what it's always gonna be like? People were like, yes, ? So I'm curious to see kind of what it'll be like. I also think post-pandemic, it's just been different, people say. And I have no concept of what it used to be like. I have no idea. I have no concept of what it was. I know it was very different.
So something that I frequently don't say on the podcast, just because I don't want any legal repercussions, but I do work as an equity audition monitor. So I am frequent.
What about this? We're having this whole discussion. Yes.
Well, I also try and keep that a little secret because I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble with work, but I do work as an audition monitor. So I am at the person at the table checking everyone in, signing everyone up. And it has been this strange dichotomy this year of there will either be 9 million people there or there will be 2 people there. Because I do think, once again, people are starting to get more specific, and there are those shows that people know that they are not necessarily right for, or they don't want to take up that space from other people, which is nice. That is very nice. And those days are very easy for me at work, which I love. But those 9 million people days are just, it can be a little heartbreaking on my side of the table too, because I'm like, I would like to get everyone seen.
Of course.
I would like to get everyone seen. I would like everyone to have a chance to get in there. I am also in this same boat that we're all in. Like, I'm on everyone's team, but also there are so many people. Logistically, I have to do whatever casting is telling me to do. Sometimes they choose not to see non-union at all, and it can be tricky. So it's something that you kind of have to fortify yourself with, because I think it's very easy to get attached to a show or a role, and then you see that call that is doing that show, and you're like, this could be my chance. This could be my chance to finally do this, get this on my resume so I can start doing it more. And then it can be really devastating when it is not, especially for our non-union friends and our first timers around. Like, auditions and like opportunities are so hard to come by in general. So you kind of, I hate to phrase it like this because it sounds so cynical, but you have to not care. You have to not care. You have to be able to go in, do what you do so well, and then leave and completely forget about it.
Yeah, it's like you have to, I'm still learning how to do this.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to wear your heart on your sleeve and like change your shirt when you leave the room, if that makes sense. I'm still learning how to do that. I don't totally know how, because it's one of those things too when like I have a hard time when people say like, oh, it's not personal. Because I think what we bring to things, you know, especially when we're like, if you're in like a casting like process, I think with like general auditions, when you're just like singing a song and doing a cut for a show, it's like totally different. Yeah. But if you are, you know, working on materials and coming in and, you know, putting pieces of yourself and your heart into things and things don't pan out, of course it's not personal. Like, you can kind of zoom out and objectively say like, of course, like, maybe I'm too short. Maybe the person like that you have cast to play this principal male role, like, we would not look like a match together. Maybe like that.
Maybe you look like siblings.
Of course.
It can literally come down.
Or maybe we don't look like siblings. You know, things like that, where in that sense it's not personal. But because we put our whole hearts into everything that we do, because we're artists and that's what we're taught to do and it's what we literally have to do, we always take it so personally. So it's this weird balance of like, how do I bring all of myself to this and then leave it? And I think something that I'm trying to work on, it's a lot of trial and error is what I found. Yeah. And something that I'm trying to work on this year and experimenting with is like, okay, what if I decide to walk into these rooms knowing what I have to offer, and trying to like stand really firm in that, instead of hoping and wishing. Like instead of walking into rooms hoping and wishing, walking into rooms, standing firm and knowing.
Yeah.
It's been easier to walk out and feel less worried.
Totally.
If that makes sense.
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, everything is so subjective, and like it's easy to say that and listen to that, but like it truly can be, oh, you are too short. It can be, hey, we're renting a costume package for this season, and it would just be so much more convenient if we had people that had these exact measurements or something like that, especially for summer stock seasons. That is so common. It's like, we're doing Mamma Mia, and we have all of these shiny suits all ready to go, and it would be easy if we could put this ensemble all in these specific costumes, which sucks. Don't get me wrong. That sucks. It's very... it's a reflection of the industry and the money of it all as a whole, which is tough to kind of grapple with in all of this other stuff. But it is truly so subjective. And we are also now in this phase too. I don't want to say phase, because I think this is probably the way it should always be. But it feels like more and more these days, it's just like they are just looking for authenticity. They want you to go into a room and do what you do so they get to know you. They are not looking so much like, oh, I want this person to come in, sing this role, perform this role for us in this general audition of 5 different shows in the season. We just want to know who you are, and so we can kind of put you in our puzzle. Because, like, at the end of the day, that is what a casting director's job is. It is for them to see you and decide how you fit into the puzzle. So it's not so much you going in and saying, hey, I'm Elle Woods, that's who I am. It's me going in and saying, hey, I'm Cara, and they go, you know what? Cara would be a great Elle Woods.
Well, and it's also
which you would be.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that's like the thing that I am filming with not to do.
Of course.
That's something I try to remind myself of when I start getting like very focused. Because sometimes you go into things and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to sing this song and do this thing to be this one very specific part that I know that they're looking for? You have to remind yourself that these casting directors are casting so many things. And I cannot tell you how many times and how many friends and how many peers I have watched walk into rooms and auditions and end up getting jobs that they never were going in for.
Yeah.
So like, you're doing yourself a disservice by not bringing yourself into that room, because if you bring yourself into that room, that casting director might see you and say, oh my gosh, wait, I'm casting this other thing and you are perfect for that. And then all of a sudden your headshot's in that pile and you never know where that's going to lead to. So you have to remember that in the back of your head. Like the only thing I can ask of myself, and the only thing that we can control, is doing our absolute best and bringing ourselves 100% to something. Like that is all you can ask of yourself. It is all you can control. We can't control what they think of us. We can't control what anyone else says of us. All you can control is that you just try your absolute hardest. And whatever comes of it, comes of it.
Totally. And we're also in an age now, too, where people are really starting to take a lot of risks with like concepts of shows and whatnot. So you may go in and they may be like, wow, you know what? Actually, it would be so fascinating if we had this person play this role that typically probably wouldn't be playing this role for X, Y, and Z reason that I have in my head because I'm so artistically brilliant and whatnot, So like there's also just, once again, there's so many pieces of this puzzle that come into play that you cannot take it to heart. You can't. That will be what destroys you, because being an actor is as hard as everyone says it is when you're saying, I want to go to school for theater. And they're like, I don't know about that. I'm not sure if you're built for that. And some people aren't, and that's okay. But if you are devoting yourself to this life, you have to be. You have to make yourself that way. And you have to find, there's no one way of doing it. You have to find how it works best for you. It's probably going to take a lot of trial and error and a lot of devastation and heartbreak, but you will fortify, you will rebuild, and that is how you will be able to enter that room best. That is when you will be at your peak. I'm going in, I'm myself, they can take it or they can leave it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it boils down to in the end, My first regional job that I ever booked, I submitted for, there was a call, they were seeking one actor for Little Mermaid, and then they were doing Dogfight. They were seeking 2 roles in Dogfight or whatever. And I was like, oh, Little Mermaid, that's something I really want to do. Dogfight, never heard of it. Who cares? Whatever. So I submitted the materials that they requested, forgot all about it. And then 3 months later, I got a call that was like, hey, are you still available for Dogfight? And I was like,
Huh?
yeah. What is that? Yeah.
And those are the ones you always end up, those are the ones you always end up booking, are the ones that you're like, what? Like,
yeah.
Or you're like, well, I'm not going to get, like, because they're the ones that you just are like, you don't put the pressure on for, that you're like, I don't know what this is. Those are always
It's gonna
the
be
ones you end up booking. They're the ones that you're like, God, I only got one take of this. Well, I guess it'll have to do. That's the one you book. Like, that, it just is. And you forget about it. Like, that happened to me. I booked my first TV show, and
also, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Just premiered
Thank you.
Well,
I, like, totally transparently, like, I won't even pretend I've never in my life taken an on-camera class. I know nothing about film and television. I know absolutely nothing about it. I don't even know how to tape for it. Like, I really don't know anything about it. So I always feel kind of like a fish out of water whenever I'm taping for film and television, because I'm like, I have to be doing this wrong. So when I submitted this tape, I just kind of totally forgot about it, as I typically do when I film television tapes. I just kind of forget about them, because I'm like, I'm not getting that.
I mean, also, they're so protective of, like, what the material is. So it's like you're doing this thing completely out of context, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. But
really short, too, almost always. And then my agent sent me an email, and they were like, hey, you're on hold for this. And I was like, what does that mean? And then they called me, and they're like, you got it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And they're always the ones that you're just like, well, whatever. Like,
yeah.
And then
gotta do it.
And then all of a sudden you're doing Dogfight.
And then you're doing Dogfight. And then you listen to that soundtrack for the first time, and you're like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know what they saw, but I don't know if I can do this.
Oh my Lord.
And then you do, and it's amazing, and you have the time of your life. But that is how it goes, you know? But then you have those times where you're stalking Callback Corner, which also do not look at Callback Corner. That is poison. It is going to be the death of you. It is a forum on Backstage where everyone's like, has anybody gotten a callback for this yet? And everyone's waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, and someone's like, I got one. And then you're like,
no, nothing good can ever come of it. Don't ever look at it.
No, it's really bad. Do we look at it? Yes.
Yeah,
should we know?
I've never looked at Callback Corner and left feeling good, so don't do it.
That's exactly right.
So don't do it.
That is exactly right. And then you have those moments where you learn that you didn't get it. You didn't get this thing you care about, and you leave audition season maybe not having anything lined up for the summer or whatever, you know? And what do we do?
It's happened to me.
Yeah, it happens to me,
you
know? It happened to me last year, and you know what you do? You just wait. You sit there and you wait, because as soon as summer starts and all of these people that did book things leave the city and are on their contracts, everything that's happening is all yours. You're right in the thick of it. It is much easier to get seen. There are way more opportunities happening. These are typically, if summer auditions are typically things that are going to start happening in the fall. Sometimes it's going to be your winter shows. Sometimes they hold off to the fall for winter shows, but your Christmas carols, your Elf the Musicals, your tour of The Grinch, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then there are more opportunities when that happens, which is sucky at first when you're sitting there and everyone's off doing their summer stuff. But then it is better because you are starting to get more time to be seen and do the things that you love to do. And that's kind of how it goes, you know? You just keep chugging. Yeah. Because you have to. And you have to believe so much that what is meant for you will not pass you by. Because once again, everything is so subjective, but there is going to be someone that sees you and they're going to be like, I love you. I love this person. Even if it's just your vibe. I'm a huge fan of, listen, I don't need to meet the most talented person in the room. If they like my vibe and want to have me in their rehearsal process, amazing. Great. I love that. I love self-validation as much as I love actor validation. So yeah, you have to believe that your opportunity is coming, and that doesn't mean that you just wait for it. I mean, you still have to put in work, but you can't put in that work being like, I am working for this opportunity. I am working to get better. I am working to better myself as a performer and as a person and learn how to audition. I learned my groove in that. And once that happens, then they will see that, and that will be where my time comes. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's also like a lot of times you're going to auditions because you're like, yes, I would like to be in the show, but also I want to be seen by these casting people, you know, or whatnot. Because in this industry, it is all about who you know.
Yes.
And they say that, and you're like, oh, yeah, totally. And then you're in the thick of it, and you're like, oh my God, wait, no, yeah, it actually is. Like, I know this person, they know this person, they helped me get an audition for this thing, you know? So building your community is so important in that regards. But like a lot of time you are showing up more for the possibility of having that crazy opportunity happen rather than the actual audition itself, which is weird because of all of the uncertainty, but it works.
Yeah.
You know?
Something I always say is like, it's about the long game. Especially in this industry, it is always, always about the long game. And kind of to go back to what you just said, I always say I've never looked back on a no and not understood why. And sometimes it's taken years. There's so many of them that I still don't understand.
Yeah.
But I have never, ever, ever in my life looked back on something that didn't pan out and not been like, oh, now I get it. And sometimes it's career-oriented. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I couldn't book that job because I had to meet someone that would be in my life forever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I couldn't book that job because I had to be there for that audition. Like, I think about the first summer that I didn't book work post-college. And I was like hustling and hustling and hustling. And when I was in college, I booked work every summer. And it was because I was a little crazy and just like I also kind of had this unhealthy mindset of like, I felt like I had to. And if I didn't, I was like, it's over. I'm a failure, which is incorrect. But that's how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
So when I didn't have anything lined up and the summer of 22 had to come back to New York and didn't have anything, I was like, my God, what's wrong with me? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And that was the summer of 2021. And my whole life changed that summer. That was the summer that if I wasn't in New York for that summer, I wouldn't be on this panel right now with any of you, speaking to literally any of you. I was working 40 hours a week as a waitress. Social media began to change my life. I met people and went to places that have now not only become some of my best friends, but like professionally, these relationships have snowballed down to so many different opportunities now in 2025. I think about that summer. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had been gone, I wouldn't have the life that I do today.
Truly.
It was so important that I couldn't do that. I think about the TV show that I just filmed. I think about a job or two that I was so sad that I did not book for the fall.
Yeah.
And something that I always kind of say whenever I try to say this like out loud, when something that I had been really hopeful for doesn't work, I say, okay, I trust you. Whether you're like a spiritual person or a religious person, or you just like literally anything, I say that out loud. And I think about it because if I had been away at that contract, I wouldn't have been here to add a new section to my resume. And who knows what that's going to lead to later on in my life and my career. Like, you have to think about it in those sense. And it's so hard in the moment to know those things because, when that's happening, I'm like, I know that there's going to be a reason for this. And right now it sucks so bad. But two things can be true at the same time. You let yourself feel that. You let it suck. And then you keep moving forward because ultimately it will be a blessing. You just don't know how yet.
Especially when you like come back and then you're like sitting here working your survival jobs and you're like, wow, I hate this. I hate this. It feels kind of humiliating because all of my friends are out doing these things. But then you go home and then you make plans with someone and then you get really close. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a social life when you're an actor. Outside of acting, outside of theater, where you can just hang out with friends, because in those moments where you are not able to do the things you love, then you get to be with the people you love. And those relationships are so important, and they are going to be what get you through in this world. So, I mean, once again, when you have all that free time, that is the time to devote to yourself and to your community and to doing all these things. Because also when you are out there busy for a year and stuff, it's going to get harder to communicate with them. And the better relationships you have, those bonds are going to also be what carries you through that. And it's just, you got to do it. You got to do it for yourself, because at the end of the day, yourself and your well-being are the most important thing in all of this, which is so hard to kind of grapple with. Also, everyone, go to therapy.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Get a therapist.
And I'll be there tomorrow.
Cool.
So
amazing.
we're gonna go
for you. But yeah, we're getting a little slow on time, so I do want to open it up to a Q&A. But of course, what are we doing after every audition that we have every day?
Post-audition treat.
We're getting our post-audition treat. Yours, of course, is the culture
espresso.
Yeah.
Chocolate chip cookie, of course.
Chocolate chip. Have you ever had black and white?
Yes, it's so good.
Good.
I had it by accident because I went like when it was about to close and there were no chocolate chip cookies left.
Yeah.
And I'm like I will eat any cookie you literally put in front of me. It's so good.
That's
black and white was
my
really
personal
good.
favorite.
I liked it a lot.
Thank you, Danny. Danny works at Culture.
Yes, huge fan. Big deal.
Thank you. yeah. Give it up for the cookies and candy.
For those of you who don't know, Culture Espresso is a coffee shop here in New York that also happens to make the best chocolate chip cookie that's ever existed in the entire world. So.
It was literally rated number 1.
Yeah, it was actually. There's all the locations are kind of in this area too,
yes.
So you have to go. They're
Take
so
a
good.
swing by.
So good.
You know? So yeah, I think for the last 15 minutes or so, I would love to open it up to the floor. If anybody has any questions, generally speaking, about the actor life, about anything that we're doing here, or really anything in general, take it away.
Seeing at Gales, I highlighted you guys. Did you have to audition for, or did you just sign a message?
Yeah. So the process of working at Gales is basically, I had a lot of friends that had worked there. And oddly enough, I was actually working at a restaurant literally up the street. The restaurant, I had no idea. And a lot of my friends were like, why don't you work here? And I was like, I don't know. I'm also kind of someone who likes to keep some areas of my life very separate. Boundaries are very important to me. But they were like, you should do it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Why not? And so the process of applying to Gales is that you send an email. There's an email on the website. And you kind of introduce yourself. I think I sent my resume and my headshot. I also sent my waitressing resume because I had been a waitress. You don't have to have serving experience. A lot of us do. A lot of us don't. But I had done that. Maybe I had sent a reel. Gosh, I don't even remember. It was so long ago, which is crazy to think about. But I then got an email back from Jeff, who is one of the people that owns Scales. And he invited me in to audition. And literally how you audition for Gales is we stop singing around 8-ish. Dinner service ends at 9. We stop singing around 8 so we can kind of start closing. He hands you the mic and is like, go for it. And you just let it rip for whoever's there and you sing whatever. And we're all still there. So I sang so much better. I auditioned on the same day as Hannah Lauren Wilson. We were there on the same day. I remember singing so much better. There are some instances where I'll never forget certain people auditioning. We had this one server, Kiani, who, gosh, I don't even remember what she sang, but I do remember every single one of us stopped what we were doing and just stood there and listened. And then when those people will leave, we'll be like, if you don't hire them, I'll quit my job. So that's kind of how it happened. And then I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get the job. And yeah, and here we are.
What's up?
Oh, I know that you usually say that just because you work in theater doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your whole life to it. And that's something I've been finding really important. I'm a college freshman. I'm studying stage management and whatnot.
Nice.
Right now, I'm kind of in this break zone and trying to find other things that I like to do and hobbies and things. What are some hobbies and things that you enjoy doing and relaxing outside of theater?
Oh my gosh. I love to knit. This is kind of a weird fun fact. I am an incredibly advanced knitter and a crocheter. Is that the right adjective?
Yeah.
Which is such a weird, bizarre fact.
Are you self-taught?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I did it when I was very young. I taught myself through YouTube videos. That was kind of how I learned.
YouTube University, everybody.
Yeah, right. Truly, through everything. It is so much easier than you think it is. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. It's also just a nice, like, it's very mindful. You know, it keeps you very present. And so, like, that's one of my favorite ways to kind of unwind. It's creative, which I really like.
I started embroidering
Oh,
last year,
so fun.
kind of for that same reason. I was like, I need things to do that I am not currently doing because I'm going out of my mind. I'm also just like an ADHD multitasker person too. So like, I'm like, I want to listen to my audiobook. That is something I want to actively do, but I simply can't unless my hands are doing something. So I was like, I know how to sew. I know how to paint. And that felt like the intersection between the two of them. And one of my favorite things to do in the city, in this world, is go sit in Central Park with my audiobook and my embroidery. And that is how I spend my springs and my summers.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. No, it is truly so nice and therapeutic and relaxing. And it's just a nice little form of escapism. And then afterwards, you get a cool thing, you know?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, that's a nice thing is that, like, you do all that, and then all of a sudden it's December, and everybody gets a hat. Like, you know what I mean? That's one of my favorite things to do. It's just like finding little things that can just be yours. And also, I think it's important that those hobbies and things that you like don't become like monetized. They just become things that you do for fun, and they're not doing, like, that's why I don't share about it on social media. Sometimes I'll be like, guys, I made this blanket, look. And everyone's like, what? And then I'm like, don't talk about it for a year. You know what I mean? Like, it's important to keep it, because the second you like monetize it, it starts to take the joy away from it. You know, that's why social media has, I try to set a very firm boundary with social media that it always has to be fun. The second I feel like I have to, I stop. Hard stop. That's why I try to talk about many other things. Like, you'll notice that sometimes I don't talk about theater for 2 weeks. Sometimes I talk about theater only for 2 weeks. And part of that reason why is because I always try to ask myself, like, God, I really am so frustrated with my career right now, and it's not making me feel good. I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to talk about all the other silly little things that I like.
Also, the weird part of adulthood of like recognizing where you're like, oh, I don't actually have to do this thing.
No!
I choose to do it, and there should probably be a reason why.
Yes, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? That's kind of, unless it's like your taxes or something, like you have to do.
You have to do your taxes.
You know what I mean? But yeah, like, you have to find those things that make you happy and protect your joy for them, I think would be the best advice I could give.
I love that. Protect your joy.
You have to.
Oh, God, yes, do it. Over here?
So what advice would you have for someone that graduated with a musical theater degree but has not had the courage to take the leap and just go after an audition?
Yeah.
Take the leap. Go after the audition.
Yeah, I think, wait, has anyone here, like, listened to or read Mel Robbins' stuff? Oh my gosh. Okay, I need you to go home and first off, listen to her podcast. That was kind of my gateway. I'm reading one of her books right now. It's called The High Five Theory. And she's got a couple of them. And I've kind of had, not kind of in the same vein, but sometimes I struggle with this thing where I, like, know that I have the skill set to do something, and something is holding me back from just doing it. And I don't know why it's holding me back. Like, I don't feel like I'm procrastinating. That's not the right word. And I was listening to something that she said about this. And she was like, you know what? Sometimes the first step when we notice this thing in ourselves is just to take a step back and, like, forgive ourselves and be like, oh, wow, like, I must be really stressed and overwhelmed. Like, this thing must be really stressing me out for me to be so nervous and scared and avoiding it. And then the next step is, like, count down from 5 and sign up. Just do it. Like, and it sounds it's so much easier for me to say than it is for you to do.
Yeah.
But, like, I've been trying to kind of practice that in my own life, you know, with things that I feel a bit more hesitant to do, things that I try to kind of put on the back burner or that I'm avoided of because who knows why. I'll unpack that tomorrow in my own therapy. But like, something that I've been trying to do is I'll count down from 5 and I'll sign up for that open call.
Mm-hmm.
I will see that audition. I will lay out my outfit for the night before. Mm-hmm. I'll pack my bag the day before.
There are so many variables that you will not be able to control. So do what you can, but also just, like, especially with this, like, even just go to an audition. I don't even care if you sign up. I don't care if you get seen. Sit in the holding room, you know, take a baby step, put yourself in that environment, and just see that it is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible. definitely be as prepared as you possibly can, but like take the baby steps. There is always going to be fear associated with it. You know, every single one of us in those rooms are always terrified and anxious. And you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. Because also another thing is part of being a professional actor is not being booked all the time.
Yeah.
That is not what being a professional actor is. It is showing up. It is showing up to an audition and saying, you know what, I didn't get seen today, but I went to work. You know, I went to work doing the thing. And, you know, I mean, my biggest roadblock prior to like really starting to put myself out there for auditions and stuff was like, I didn't know the career side of it all. As like, that's kind of why this podcast exists. It's because I was like, I had to learn all this stuff on my own. I don't want anyone else to have to go through that if they don't have to. So like, ask anyone anything. My DMs are also always open. Please, just like, if you have questions about things, if there are things that you are worried about, lean on the community, you know, ask. If there are people that were in your program that are doing it, ask them. Go to an audition with a friend.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you
gosh,
how helpful that is. Just go to an audition with a friend, bring a card game while you wait, you know, just stuff like that. But yeah, it's easy for me to say, just go audition, you know, but like find the place in yourself that reminds you why you love to do this and let that be what drives you.
And you would rather, something I try and say to myself is you would rather say, oh, well, than what if, you know, looking back.
That's nice.
I didn't make it up. I didn't say that. I cannot take credit for it, but I try and tell myself that.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
I love it. Amazing.
Anywho.
Yes, right. Amazing.
And so can you speak on like how to get them and because there's one in my hometown that I'm applying to right now and just like the benefits of it.
Yeah. What kind of internships?
It's at the Little Oil Playhouse.
Okay, great.
And it's like their summer like artistic internships. And so
like performance based?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was kind of my whole life in college. It was like internship city, especially in like the EMC era. It was like, that's kind of how you got your points. So it was like, great, I'm going to sell my soul for $100 a week in a bunk bed. Like, absolutely, I'll do it. But yeah, I mean, so I know for me personally, how I got every single internship and like resco job was through those big cattle call auditions. It was like through A1s, the Southeastern Theater Conference, the Northeastern Theater Conference. I don't know if Straw Hat is even still a thing. I know that they've kind of changed now. I do know SETC is still there. I do know A1s is still there. But that is how I got them. Kind of that, because it's just such a great way to put yourself out there and audition for all of them at the same time. And sometimes when you go to more than one, they see you more than once. And then you kind of build relationships with them. Like I still sometimes go in for theaters that like I went in last year and they're like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen you in years. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like it's been 5 years. But that was a huge thing for me with internships. And I know internships were so beneficial because when I graduated college, I graduated with a resume, a professional resume, and not just a resume, but with connections that have served me to this day. And that is why those internships are so important. Are they necessary? No.
Do they treat you well? Not always. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it can be.
I always say the summers were the best summers of my life. I met the best people on the planet. I could never do them ever again. Just because they are crazy and you are just doing the craziest things. But like those people will be in my wedding. Like I would go back in a heartbeat to every one of those places. Like they were truly, genuinely the best summers of my life.
Yeah.
But the reason why those internships are so special and why I think like whenever you have the opportunity, run towards them is because it is those internships that will always serve you in the rest of your career, whether it be the coworker that you have or the director that you work with or the artistic director, always.
I think especially with those big cattle calls too, and I think in general for big cattle calls, go in, sing something you love, do something, perform something you love. You know, it may not be the most appropriate for whatever, but that's going to show them that A, you are talented, and B, you are passionate and they want to have you around, you know? Make yourself be what they want to hire and not your
Because you don't even know what you're auditioning for. Like, they're all doing different seasons. So you're like, great, I have 90 seconds to give you a slate and 32 bar cut. And you're just like letting it rip. Like, my lord. So you just kind of bring yourself to the table.
They want to hire as many non-union performers as they can.
For
that
real?
will be more cost effective for them in the long run. So use that to your advantage. Go in and be talented for them. And that is that.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Let's go over here.
I'm actually a violinist primarily for
Amazing.
And I moved here last year after graduating in Boston. And I feel like New York can be like the coolest place ever. You have everything you could ever want at your fingertips. But I feel like on the bad days, it can feel like cold, scary, isolating, like
Yeah.
very overwhelming. So just wondering if you have like any tips as a musician on dealing with the city on those rough days.
Where are you, if you don't mind me asking, what area of the city do you live in?
I live in Yorkville.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in general, being a New Yorker, you have to have a spot near you. You need to have a bar or a coffee shop of some place that you enjoy just spending time in, even if it's just with a book by yourself. That can be so rejuvenating in ways. I will also say, never, I mean, you're going to feel ashamed, but never be ashamed of just taking a day in for yourself and doing absolutely nothing. You know, treat yourself, recharge yourself, veg out, do all that kind of stuff. Also, treat yourself. Get yourself a little treat. Get yourself a coffee or a get takeout or something. Those are my coping mechanisms for sure. What you got?
Something that was important to me was like making my house a home.
Also that, yeah.
So that like when I came home, I felt like I was home, you know? And I'm fortunate that I live in a part of Manhattan that's like far away from Midtown. So I really do feel like I'm getting away. But when I shut my door and I come into my apartment, like I feel like I'm in a space where I feel comfortable and relaxed and not stressed. I don't feel like I'm like squatting in my own home. You know what I mean? Like it's my space. When I really invested in taking care of my space, and it doesn't have to be expensive and crazy because we live in a city where Facebook Marketplace is a dream.
So
you
true.
can find especially in Yorkville, the stooping on the east side is incredible. We have an original New Yorker print in our apartment that is so insane that we found on the first day that we moved here because we were got a crazy COVID deal on the Upper East Side. But like almost every piece in my apartment we got on Facebook Marketplace or we found on the street. But it's finding those things that make your house feel like a home so that you can just like take it all off and leave it at the door, you know?
Also, pro tip, folks, Burlington Coat Factory does not just have coats. They have home goods as well.
Yeah.
It is everything that you will buy at Marshall, TJ Maxx, or Home Goods, but cheaper. A+. Also, I will say, speak to at least one human during the day. That is so important to remind yourself that you are not completely alone. Make a phone call, do a FaceTime. If you can't meet someone in person, just speak to another human out loud. Sometimes I'll just like be in my headphones all day and then like I'll go to Starbucks or something and someone talks to me and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I exist here.
I started like full-time freelancing for the last 2 months to see what it's like. And I will literally get like a day and a half in and be like, I'm in my apartment. Like it's crazy. Like you have to be social.
Truly.
It's crazy.
Truly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over here, my friend.
I know that you like you were talking about like hours and spelling bee, and I know that was like a dream role for you. So like this is like a 2-part question. What was your experience like in that show and like in that environment, and like also what are other dream roles or like shows that you want to be in?
Yeah. It was really special. And it was really interesting too, because so the theater that I went back to do spelling bee is arguably one of my favorite places in the world. It was a place that I was an intern in 2019. And it was obviously a dream role of mine, a dream place, like all of it kind of felt perfect. But for those of you who don't know, I lost my mom when I was around 20 years old. And so when I was offered this role by the theater, to come back and do it, they were so kind. I mean, it's the new London Barn Playhouse. I'll fully drop the name. The team there, not to swear, something I always say is that they just really give a shit about you. They just care so deeply about you, because when they sent me that email, they also sent me a follow-up one that was like, whatever you need in this space, let us know. Like, we would love for you to do this. If you don't feel that you can, of course. And it just so happened that everyone on that team I had worked with my intern summer. They had either choreographed a show or directed a show. So it was really interesting going into that space, like knowing, and it was never said, it was never talked about, but like knowing that everyone in the room knew. I felt like so supported from every angle without anyone ever saying a word. And it was a really interesting experience because like my family didn't really know the show. For them to come, that was a really, really interesting experience for them to see it and be like, whoa, because the barn was also the last place that she really ever saw me perform. So it was like, there was a lot going on. But it was really fascinating. It was really cathartic. Something I've always said, every show I've ever done since losing my mom has taught me something about my grief in one way or another. And it's always been very surprising. And so Spelling Bee was a really special one, a little on the nose. But that was really cool. And being able to do something that I've always wanted to do was so cool because you don't always get to do that.
Yeah.
I will say, kind of to circle back to the thing that we had said earlier, like there's so many things that I would love to do so much. The role that I just keep coming back to is Elle Woods. I want to play her.
We should do Legally Blonde together sometime.
It's one of those.
Let's put it out there in the universe.
It's one of those things too that like every time I go in for it, or every time I submit for it, I'm like, yes, I feel like I'm ready to do it now. And then I will circle back to it. And then when it doesn't pan out, if it doesn't pan out, the next time I go in, I'm like, oh, no, I wasn't. Now I feel like over the last 2 years of my life, I've learned a lot about myself. I have learned so much about myself as I continue to. And she is someone that I would love to tackle at this point in my life. Like in terms of like who she is as a character, but also what it takes to do that role physically. Like
it's also
physically.
Just the best show ever.
It's also so fun.
Yeah.
But that is the one. That is the one that I am like guns blazing. I'm busting down the door. Somebody, like, that's the one. Oh no way! Oh my gosh, the best.
Amazing.
They're the best.
I do have to cut it off there, folks. I'm very sorry we were running out of time. Folks, if you loved what you saw here, thank you so much. Go out there, do the thing. We are rooting for you. We are your biggest supporters, and you can be our biggest supporters by finding us on Patreon. That is patreon.com/BA2Broadway. Your normal disclaimer, we are not gatekeeping any information on there. That is just for fun, silly bonus content with all of the fools that join me on this show. As always, you can find us on most social media platforms at BA2Broadway. You can find me at Brennan Stefanik. Cara, where can folks find you if you want to be found?
Yes, just my full name on literally anywhere you can find me. It's Cara Rose DiPietro.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Always. Thank you for having me back.
Grateful for you. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I'm so grateful. And until next time, folks, bye. From BA to Broadway is created, produced, and edited by Brennan Stefanik, music by Dylan Kaufman, and cover art by Jordan Vongsithi.